Hey, I was just about to head up to your room. Do you need anything from that cafe downstairs? I figured you were probably resting or maybe battling a vending machine. Didn't expect radio silence. You okay?
I'm better than okay, actually. I've been having these waves of pressure since early this morning. At first, I thought it was just the usual Braxton Hicks, but then they started getting sharper. I've been timing them for the last hour. They're about 5 minutes apart now. I told the nurse. They've got me hooked up to a monitor. It's happening, Theo. This baby is coming.
Wait, seriously? Today? But we're still a week out. I mean, I know babies don't care about schedules, but wow, that's soon. Are you sure?
Very sure. She's made it clear she's on her own timeline, which honestly feels like foreshadowing for the next 18 years. I'm nervous, yeah, but I've been waiting for this moment for months. I just want to meet her. I want to hold her and know she's real.
God, that's wild. I mean, we talked about this moment 100 times, but I still thought we had more time to ease into it. And this is probably the worst timing to bring it up, but Ivy messaged me earlier. Remember her, Ivy Becker from high school?
The one with the lifestyle blog and the Baby Bump TikTok series? Yes, I remember her. I'm pretty sure she's doing a product review on her stretch marks next.
That's the one. Apparently she's in labor too. Got admitted this morning. Said her contractions started sometime last night. I was surprised to hear from her. She sounded pretty stressed. She doesn't have anyone with her from what I could tell.
That's sad. I can't imagine going through this alone. At least she reached out to someone, though I'm not sure why she chose you of all people.
We reconnected a while back, kind of accidentally. Just friendly conversation here and there. I think she just panicked and messaged the first familiar name in her phone. I told her I'd check in, see if she needed anything, but obviously you're my priority. I'm on my way now.
Alright, just let's keep the focus here. One big event at a time. I'm kind of hoping our daughter doesn't arrive while you're out playing emotional support to a classmate.
No chance. I'm headed straight to you, no detours. I'll be there before the next contraction. 10 minutes, Ellen. That's all it was. I got one phone call and made a bad call. People screw up. You're acting like I committed some crime.
10 minutes? Don't reduce it to that. This isn't about a stopwatch. It's about presence, about priority, about who you showed up for when it actually counted. You didn't choose your child. You didn't choose your wife. You chose someone else's panic over my pain. And you did it without hesitation.
I didn't know you were that far along. I thought I had time. Ivy was sobbing. I was the only person she had. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Ellen. I was trying to help someone who had no one.
You say you were helping, but you were just escaping. You didn't want to be there for something raw and real and permanent, so you ran toward the thing that let you play hero without facing consequences. That's not empathy, Theo. That's cowardice dressed up as concern.
You don't get to rewrite this. I showed up the next day. I came back. I brought flowers. I apologized. But you didn't want any of that. You had already made up your mind to punish me. And now you're dragging me through divorce court because I didn't hit some emotional attendance checkpoint on time?
This isn't punishment, it's a boundary. I gave you so many chances to show up for me, and every time you were just elsewhere. I don't want an apology. I want a life where I don't have to explain the basics of commitment to someone who promised it years ago.
So what, you get everything now? The baby, the house, the narrative? I'm just the guy who missed one day and loses everything?
You didn't lose everything because of one day. You lost it because you never realized what was worth holding on to until it was already gone. And I'm not keeping your child from you. I'm holding you to the responsibilities you swore you'd uphold the minute she was born. clear your head? All of it lines up perfectly with her second trimester.
Come on, Ellen, don't do this. You're spinning. You just had a baby, you're exhausted, and you're letting your imagination run wild. Ivy and I are friends. She needed support. I gave her that. Nothing else.
You were in the room when she gave birth. You saw the baby. You held him. And you didn't even flinch. That doesn't scream distant acquaintance, Theo. That screams father.
I was there because she was alone. She didn't have anyone. I didn't want the kid being born into silence. That doesn't mean I'm his...
Don't bother finishing that sentence. I already know.
No, you don't! You think you do, but you don't know what really happened. I was trying to be kind, Ellen. I was trying to help someone I cared about, and maybe I messed up by getting too close, but that's not a crime!
You didn't get too close, Theo. You got involved, emotionally, physically, repeatedly. It took a bit of groundwork. I rented a unit 2 doors down from hers, under a holding company no one could trace back to either of us. I bumped into her a few times in the hallway. The first couple times it was just a polite nod, but the third time I offered to help her carry her groceries upstairs. She asked if I had children. I told her I didn't, but I said I'd always wanted one, and that kind of loss has a way of opening people up. She wanted someone to listen. I made sure I had time. Of course you did. Let me guess, she started talking about him? By day 3, yes. Though she never said his name, she referred to him like a myth. Someone torn between 2 worlds. Someone stuck. She said he told her he didn't want to hurt anyone, but she wasn't sure he'd stay. She looked tired, Ellen. Tired and hopeful. So I told her that if she wanted to protect herself and the child, maybe it was smart to have clarity. I said that if the test came back positive, she'd have leverage, and if not, at least she'd have the truth. And she agreed, just like that? I brought her a cheek swab kit and a gift bag under a bottle of baby lotion and a burp cloth. She didn't hesitate. She even thanked me. She said she didn't know how she would have gotten the courage to do it on her own. She handed it back to me without a second thought, and I made sure it ended up at the lab that same afternoon. God, she had no idea what she was handing over. She thought she was securing her future, and for a moment maybe she was, just not the future she imagined. You let her keep texting him, didn't you? Let her believe she still had a chance? Of course. She thought her departure would clear the path, that once you were gone, he'd be free to love her out loud. She didn't realize he was never going to leave unless someone shoved him, and she definitely didn't expect you to do the shoving with paperwork. And once she realized I wasn't disappearing? She panicked. She said she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that it all happened so fast, and she never wanted to destroy a family. I reminded her she didn't destroy anything. She just picked up a match after he'd already lit the fuse, and if she walked away now, she'd be the one holding the fire. So she stayed, not for love, not for hope, just to avoid being the villain in someone else's story. Exactly. And now she's locked in. She gets the diapers. She gets the late nights. She gets the man who folds under pressure and lies without blinking. And every day she wakes up beside him, wondering who he's texting, she'll remember what she traded her reputation for. He wanted a second family so badly. Now he has one. And every single time he tries to escape, he'll look at her and realize that freedom means exposure. So he'll stay and rot and smile for the camera. I don't need to tear anything apart, Theo. I'm just showing people what you already built. Your actions, your threats, your movements, they've all been so terribly cooperative.
I didn't want any of this! I didn't want a divorce or court battles or this never-ending war where everyone hates me and nothing I do is ever enough! She backed me into a corner. I wasn't thinking straight, and now you're acting like I'm some monster!